All right. What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to the Odum and Andrea show. This is a podcast where I sit down with my beautiful wife, Andrea, and we discuss a book of someone that has done something hopefully really cool and really awesome. Mm-hmm. And we kind of just talk about it and see if there's anything in there that inspires us to, to just do our own little adventure or what have you. Mm-hmm. And today we're reading a book called The Push, A Climber's Journey of Endurance, Risk, and Going Beyond Limits by Tommy Caldwell.
Tommy Caldwell.
Tommy Caldwell. And just throw out this book here. And by the looks of it, I don't see any snow. So hopefully, thankfully, we're not going to talk about Everest. No, we aren't going to talk about Everest. Okay.
No, we're not. It's me. I'm sad because I want to talk about Everest.
Yeah, because we haven't talked about that enough. But I'm just traumatized every time. I just think it's going to be. So this guy's, this looks like, what is this, El Cap or something like that? I don't know. Anyways, we'll discuss this. Mm-hmm. So I love rock climbing. Haven't done it in a while. We've done it a little bit here since we've been in Halifax. But then things got all shut down and everything. And haven't gone back since. And we used to do quite a bit of it at Grand River Rocks over in Kitchener, which was a really good climbing spot. I really liked it there. Yeah. So never got super good. I'd be climbing like 5'10" would be kind of my max, or bouldering kind of like a V2 or V3s if I was feeling adventurous. Yeah. But it was just great exercise and a great movement and a great way to move your body. So it's really, really cool stuff. So excited to hear about this guy's journey. And I guess when you're climbing out on the rocks like this, it's a lot more than just climbing too, because there's a lot more things, especially when people do long climbing journeys. So with that, maybe there'll be a Tom Cruise scene like in Mission Possible 2.
Oh God.
Or just free soloing a place he's never gone through before. I'm doing an Iron Cross at the top to boot. That scene is hilarious. We should maybe link to that because it's hilarious. Anyways, without further ado, The Push by Tommy Caldwell. Yeah. Take it away.
So Tommy was born premature, and he was born, I think it was like at 33 weeks. And so he was only like 4 pounds.
That's close to the cutoff. Isn't it like 36? Like
your full term at 37.
37. Okay. 37 so weeks. 4 weeks early.
Yeah. And so, but he was only like 4 pounds, and his lungs hadn't like 100% developed yet. And this was like back in like late 70s. So they didn't have the technology obviously they have today. But like doctors said like he might not survive. And so he says, I wonder if something instinctual born of my struggles when he was born always made me try harder, as if from the start something fierce beat inside my tiny heart. Not giving up seemed to come naturally to me. My parents hadn't, and their willingness to believe in my existence gave me life. So so that's kind of...
I'll rig your hand over.
I'm sorry.
No, just make it fun.
So that's kind of like how his life started, and where he thinks like this push to...
Interesting.
Kind of came, even came from, because even like back then it was like against the odds for him. So... Yeah.
Do you believe in that, in terms of like being so young and like somehow that carries through in your personality or your, you know what I mean?
Yeah, I don't know. I'm not sure.
It's an interesting, obviously we're getting into a metaphysical debate.
Yeah, it's an interesting thing to think about.
But yeah, it's a cool quote though.
It's a cool quote. So his dad was this like big, huge bodybuilder guy. You have to see a picture of this guy, because this is back like in the 70s. Yeah. So he's a huge...
Oh, yeah. Well, that's a big guy.
Yeah. And so before...
That's back when... the bodybuilders now are like...
That picture was 1980. Crazy. And so he won like a bunch of...
It's like the golden days with like... just after Arnold Schwarzenegger, I think. Or maybe during, because he was in the 70s and 80s.
Yeah. So while his dad was in college, he was super into climbing, but then it kind of took a backseat to lifting. And so he was kind of in that like early... like rock climb era. And so he would always take the family out on these crazy kind of adventures. Like they would go skiing, and he would always be pushing them, like even if the situation maybe wasn't like the safest situation. Right. Like I think he still thought like the risk was okay, but
like the father.
Yeah. So so they would do rock climbing, they would do skiing and everything like that. And
so a lot of people have different levels of safety.
100%.
Some parents don't want their kids climbing on the monkey bars by themselves.
Yeah. Yeah. And so they lived in Colorado. And so when he was 4, that was the first time he had ever really was like on a like rock climb wall. He didn't necessarily climb it. He was like put in a harness, and his dad kind of pulled him up, I guess. So, but that was like the first time he was like exposed to that. And then on their property in Colorado, they were just so close to all these different like climbing areas. So they would just always kind of go out climbing. Yeah. And so he was like because he was premature, I think that probably led him to be like pretty small. And he was really shy as well. And he's just kind of like this nerd looking kid. Like you can see a picture of him in here too. He has these like big sticky out ears, and, but he's so cute. Like he's so cute. Yeah. So, but he was like really shy. And so his dad was doing all these different things to kind of like build him up, get him out of his shell, and kind of give him this like physical tenacity that other kids his age didn't really have. And so, and he says like, because he has a sister, he says, we were never raised to be thrill seekers or adrenaline junkies. Climbing was about taking a stimulating and potentially dangerous environment, and then using our heads, our attentiveness, and our skills to make it safe. So, and like they would get excited because they would go out, like they went to Wyoming, and there was this it's called Devil's Tower. And so when he was 6, he climbed this thing, and both him and his sister were like excited to do it. Like they wanted to do it. And then when he was 7, his dad took him to Yosemite, and he climbed this crazy thing. It's called Lost Arrow Spire, and it's this big tower. There's a waterfall here, and this tower is like apart from the main wall where the waterfall is. And then there's like this Tyrolean traverse. So I don't know if you know what this is. No idea. It's basically the rope is from this big spire, and it's joined to the wall, and you just kind of go on it and like go across it, like
almost like a zip line, but you're not zip lining.
You're like crazy high up. Like it's unreal for a 7-year-old to do this. Like,
but those ropes they're tied down or whatever.
Of course. So he did a lot of this.
Sounds like it'd be quite a gorgeous view from there.
Yeah, it was amazing. So,
but it's amazing. Like kids, that rock climb, number one, they're so light. They seem they can just float up the wall, which is really kind of cool.
Yeah, it's really cool.
And a lot of kids too can have just like no fear as well too. Yeah. So they're just, they're small, light, and they can just float up. Really good climbers. Good. Especially if they're at it at an early age.
Yeah. So because his dad had like all these kind of connections to the rock climbing world, and what happened to his dad is his dad ended up, he was a coach at school. He was a teacher, and he was like a coach at the school, and he actually brought like rock climbing kind of to the school. And so he was spotting somebody, and I don't know what happened, but he tore his bicep muscle. So then it was like he was kind of done with the bodybuilding thing, and then he put all his efforts into climbing, and then climbing with Tommy as well, because he saw that this was something Tommy was like really, really good at, and so he was like encouraging it. And so he had a bunch of rock climbing friends from the old days, and one really kind of famous guy came to their house and did a talk, and his name was Warren Harding. And so he was
a talk at his house.
Yeah. Well, because there was a bunch of like his climbing buddies came over to hear this guy talk, and why he was so important was because he made the first ascent of El Cap, and it was on one of the most famous routes called the Nose, which is kind of like El Cap goes around kind of, and so the Nose is like that one. Like
the flat face.
No.
Oh no.
It's kind of like where it doesn't come out to a point, but that kind of apex of how it curves around, and so it's the Nose. So he made the first ascent of that, and so then he would go on to make another 31st ascents on Yosemite. So he was like instrumental for pioneering these big wall techniques. So the other thing we have to talk about here is there's a ton of different types of climbing, and I had no idea like how nuanced and detailed it gets, and then even like the fights and arguments over these different types of climbing was like a really big deal.
Not really, like in the whole community.
Yeah. And so what this Warren Harding did is called aid climbing. So it's not necessarily, so free climbing is different. So free climbing is like top roping, but you're on this big wall. And so they call it free climbing because you're climbing without any aid. Like you're just climbing it up and attaching your top rope as you go in case you fall.
But there's somebody belaying you the whole time though.
Yes. But that's what they call aid climbing. Or sorry, free climbing. So free soloing, which is Alex Honnold.
Oh, that's just great. That's not very many people do that compared to all the climbers.
Yes, and so that's just climbing up no ropes.
Yeah.
You're just climbing.
You fall, you die,
Yes, basically.
Yeah.
Aid climbing, though, is what this Warren Harding did, was you attach things to the wall.
Like as you go. Like
as you go, you put them in. And then as you climb back, though, you take them off.
Yeah.
And so I guess the ethos there is like you're not leaving anything on the wall. You're kind of leaving it untouched.
Mm-hmm.
But not only that, or I think also you would put in like holds sometimes maybe too to help you climb if it's like a spot where there is no holds.
There's like nothing.
Yes. And then not only that, I don't know if they use like jumars. Do you know what a jumar is?
No.
So it's kind of like you're attached to a rope and you kind of like push your foot down and it kind of propels you up the wall. So you're not actually climbing the wall. You're using a rope and kind of your foot power to like get you up the rope.
But you have to have something attached up above you though to be able to do that.
Yeah, you're on ropes, but so you're not really climbing. You're just kind of using that rope to get you up to the top. Mm-hmm. So I think I don't know if that was used in the aid climbing thing as well. I'm not really sure. And then you have sport climbing, which is different from big wall climbing. Big wall obviously is like Yosemite on like El Cap, and it's just like the walls are 3,000 feet tall. But sport climbing isn't like that. It's just a climb you could kind of do in an afternoon or something like that. A couple hours.
Or it's like a specific route. So I think one thing, like if you ever seen
sport climbing would be like a single pitch, and then a pitch is like a rope length, so like 100 or something feet of rope length.
So I think for anybody that's watched any kind of climbing just online and what they have in the competitions, I think that because they're just doing, I think that's just the top rope, or that's the sports climbing, because you have one person belaying and then they go up and then they clip the rope all along the route till they get to the top. Yeah. So that's the sport climbing.
That's the sport climbing.
And that's different from free climbing in that that's a smaller section, but free climbing is just like you can free climb El Cap as an example, because there's markers all the way up to the top, but you get to certain checkpoints where you have to like stop and regroup and get your belay up there, and you know what I mean?
Exactly, because it's more than one pitch. You need multiple ropes. So sorry, and then there's traditional climbing, and so it was traditional climbing versus sport climbing. That was the big issue back in the day, because it's called trad climbing. They carry their own gear and they place it into the rocks and then they take it out.
Well, that's
they go.
Well, that's completely different. Yeah. Because you see those people when they're climbing, they have all those things on their harness. Yeah. Because they're throwing them into the wall.
And so it was just like about
you put your own clips.
Yeah, and it was more about like minimal damage to the rock. And so what would happen is trad climbers would go to a route that people were sport climbing, and they would like take off the anything that was on left behind by the sports climbers that were having like the safety kind of gear there. So
interesting.
So there was like a big issues,
because some of those things you want to keep them on there for other people that want to sport climb.
Yeah, exactly. But
so why are you taking them off?
Well, just because they didn't agree with it. So So and then in 1970, this Warren Harding, who did the first descent of the Nose, him and his partner set out to climb the Dawnwall route, which everyone thought was an impossible thing to climb.
So it's impossible until someone does it.
Regardless of the tactics. So it took them 27 days through storms, and it was all aid climbing at this point to climb the Dawnwall. The reason why everyone thinks the Dawnwall is so impossible to climb is because the light, they call it the Dawnwall because it's like the first like wall to get heat, to get the sun.
From the sun. Yeah.
Yes, in the mornings. And then so you have issues with
just
heat of the rock, and then if there is snow or ice or something, moisture. It's gonna fall, or the ice will fall, which is obviously really dangerous.
But obviously wet rocks are super slippery.
Yep. And not only that, it's almost featureless. Like there's nothing to hold on to at points, and so people thought it would be impossible, but they were able to do it in 27 days, but it was aid climbing, not free climbing.
Right.
So yeah, so as he's growing up, his dad's taking him to do like all of these crazy climbs, and like he's basically like the youngest kid to do a bunch of these crazy climbs. He goes through it really well in the book. And he says his dad taught him it's not what happens to you, but how you deal with it, and about taking preparations and precautions and controlling as many elements of the climb as you could. So his dad it's that mitigating risk, like take risks, but take like educational type risks. So, and then his dad was also, not only was he a teacher, but he would like
a school teacher.
Yeah, but he would also do like a guided climbs kind of around the world. So he took, when Tommy was 14, he took him to Bolivia, and that was a really instrumental kind of part of his life, because he saw the people there that were fairly poor, like the porters that they hired and stuff like that, and how they were completely, you know, happy without anything like material wealth. And he said, the thought of conforming, of settling for less than the adventurous life I craved, scared me more than any mountain. I started thinking that climbing would be my path to what I considered a greater truth. The simplicity, solitude, and natural beauty were the real gems of life. And so part of this is because he had a really tough time in school. Yeah. He was always having trouble and issues. And what he learned later was he was really good like in shop class. Yeah. And so he learned later, like, because he was like a kinetic learner. Like if you can use your hands and figure it out,
just build
then
things,
that's what he was good at.
Yep.
So, you know, living like the typical 9-to-5 job or going to school or college just wasn't for him, because that's just not the kind of person he was. And the other thing he said that I really identified with for when we go rock climbing was, he says, I like the feeling of being on the rock and solving the puzzle of what sequence of moves to make. And so when we go rock climbing, like, that's part of it. It's not just the physicality of it. It's like figuring out what's the best way to move your body, and then also like the mental of like the height, because the height for me is
for you anyways.
Yeah, I have a really hard time with it.
Oh, well, especially when you're just bouldering. It's
you're
not even very
attached.
high.
I know.
Well, you're not attached to.
Well,
but.
Yeah. So.
Yeah. That's why I think. I mean, total segue here, but that's why you'll totally love jiu-jitsu, because it's just a big game of chess. Yeah. About how to
move your body.
You move your body and to, you know, submit your opponent.
Yeah.
And you have to be thinking 2, 3, 4, 10 moves ahead or whatever.
Yeah.
So that's crazy.
Yeah. Yeah. So I love that he said that, because I'm just like, yeah, it's just like a big puzzle. So yeah. So then he goes with his dad to France, and sports climbing at this time when they go to France is really becoming like a big deal. And so he's like learning more and more and more.
This is the 90s now, I'd imagine.
Yeah. This is like 94. And so what was really cool too is because even though there were all these like big fights about, you know, traditional climbing versus sports climbing and all this stuff, his dad just had this like amazing mentality, and he was just like, you do you, right? Like maybe that's not the type of climbing you enjoy or you're good at, but there's always something you can learn from somebody else, and it's all about learning and being open to learn something from everyone. So he's always kind of carried that with him. So I thought that was really awesome as well. His dad just sounds like a really cool guy.
Yeah. Sounds like the same thing that the people talk about Mount Everest and what constitutes a real climber and whatever. And at some point in a lot of things, like, who cares? Yeah, just enjoy what you're doing. Yeah. And stop worrying about what you're calling this or what you're calling that. As long as you're being true to yourself and you're doing what you enjoy. And who cares,
and don't
really?
Shit on other people. Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah. So then in 1995, and like every summer, him and his dad, they're just going like road tripping. If they're not off like a guiding, they're road tripping just around the country to different climbs that they hear about. Because of course, there's like all these like climate magazines at this time talking about the different climbs people are doing, first ascents or all of that different type of thing. So they're always traveling around. So they go to Salt Lake City, and there's a major sport climbing competition. This is in 1995. He's 16. And so they go there, and so he enters. It's just like the amateur competition, and he wins it. And he doesn't like expect anything to happen, so he wins the amateur competition. And so because
is this like climbing an indoor wall?
No, it's outdoor.
Okay.
And so because he won the amateur, they had a spot for that amateur who won in the professional comp.
To go pro or whatever.
Or just to go
just to compete in the
pro
division.
In the pro division. Yeah. So the next day he goes in the pro division. And
you win.
He wins it.
He wins the whole thing.
He wins the whole thing. And he goes up against, he couldn't even believe it, because he's 16. He's going up against these like adult men that are been climbing. And he's like, I couldn't believe, because they're like on the cover of the climbing magazines that I read. And he freaking won it. Yeah. So, and then it's like
that's the thing, those small kids or whatever, no fear, and just going up that, you know, weigh 80 pounds and just stiff breeze will blow them to the top.
You know, exactly.
Mixed in with good technique, of course.
Yeah. And so one thing we probably should talk about too is how, because you talked about what you were the level you were climbing at. So maybe we should explain because we're going to get into it a little bit of how that classification system works.
Well, I mean, we don't have to get too complicated, I don't think, into it. Just the higher the number you go, the more complicated it is. But
yeah, so you like 5. What did they start at 5.0 even 5.0?
Oh, I don't think so. Well,
like
if that would be like that would be like stairs.
5.5.
Like 5.5, 5.6 might be the
kind of starting point.
Yeah.
So anything below 5.9 is considered easy to moderate. After 5.10, then it gets subdivided into letters after it.
I think it's after 5.12.
He said in his book after 5.10.
Okay. I guess it's okay.
And then it gets subdivided into letters A to D. And so there's only been 5.14D is the highest classification when he was writing this.
Okay, I guess that's just old now.
Yes, that he was talking about. So that'll be important later. So as he was getting older and him and his dad were traveling around, his body obviously with hormones and getting older started to change, and he wasn't able to do some of these sport climbs anymore. In the comps, he wasn't like getting first anymore, and so he was getting really frustrated. Not only that, so they also,
you're like, I should be getting better, not worse.
Yeah, and so also what didn't help, but one of the summers when they went out, they brought along another up and coming climber. His name's Chris Sharma.
Oh yeah, I know Chris.
Pretty big.
Yeah.
And he was like, Chris Sharma was just like killing it, like just sending all of these climbs. And so he was like getting more and more frustrated. He's like, okay, I think I've plateaued with this sport climbing thing. I don't think this is where I fit in anymore. Like I just can't do these climbs. And so he said to his dad, can you take me to El Cap and can you teach me how to big wall climb? Because that's what he kind of felt was going to be the best thing for him.
That's funny. Chris Sharma, he was the person that I first started looking into when I was, learning to climb, and like, I gotta go online and see how the pros are doing it, and he's there.
Yeah, he's pretty awesome. He hangs a lot around with Jason Momoa too. They do a bunch of climbing together. He loves climbing. Yeah, on his Instagram, he was always taking pictures of the two of them together. So yeah. So they go to El Cap and they free climb. It's called the Salente Wall, and it takes them 5 days to do it. Normally it takes 3, and by the end of it, he's just like, I'm so freaking done with this too. And I guess the other thing,
I didn't like it.
Well, he's just so exhausted afterwards because not only you're spending your nights on the wall, like you're sleeping on the wall in these like little, they're called portaledges. Yeah. And then not only that, you're hauling, because you have to have all your food and everything like that. So you're hauling water. Yeah. And so you're hauling up your gear. And so their gear weighed like 150 pounds. So you're hauling that up to the next spot every single time. So he was kind of done. But then afterwards, of course, and he was kind of like, oh yeah, I want to do it again.
Yeah, of course.
So
when you're in it, it's miserable, but
yeah. So then at this point, he's 19 and college, he's like not interested. He's just like, he feels like I think he felt like maybe he should go, but because that's just, what you do next. But it's just like, it's nothing there for me. Like school was hard enough kind of thing. So his parents actually are really cool, and they can see that climbing is his passion. School is probably, it's not for him. And so they encourage him to go out on your own, kind of lead that dirtbag life. That's what they call it.
Right.
The dirtbag life.
So many climbers just have their van,
and that's exactly what he does. He takes the back seat out of his car, puts a mattress in there, and drives around. And his parents say to him, school's always going to be there, but this is a time in your life where you need to go out and travel all over the place and figure it out. Yep. And they say we're not going to give you any money, but when you come home, you can do your laundry, you can shower, you can rate the pantry. That's just fine. So, so he just...
And then you can just... you're living so cheap, so you can just get odd jobs here and there as well, too, to keep yourself going.
Yeah. So, so he talks a lot about all of the different kind of climbs that he does. And this one's kind of interesting. Because there's so many climbs you could go on that he talks about, but I just wanted to say this one because I thought it was really interesting. So they go to, it's a climb called Just Do It in South Rock State Park in Oregon. And so again, there's etiquette to climbing. And so if you're working on a specific route, everyone kind of doesn't climb that route until you have sent it and gotten to the top. That's just kind of the etiquette, right? So
well, that's like for anything. You don't want to crawl. You don't want to climb underneath somebody or anything like that, right?
Or you just want to give them. Well, no. It's not even about that. It's just like you want to let them get that route. If they've been working on this route, you want to let them be the first person to get to the top. You don't want to try that route before they've finished it, right? Do
you mean they try it and they go down to the bottom and then they take a break to retry it?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Or if you're working on something like over the course of like months or something, if it's a really tough climb and you're trying to figure it out and put the route up, you let that person do it. You don't come in and steal their thunder and then take that route away from them.
What if they're not there?
It's just, I don't know.
How are you going to even know?
You're getting a little too granular.
Oh, okay.
With this.
All right.
So anyways, the climb that they just do a climb had the highest grade in America, which was 514C.
Yeah.
And so this guy was trying to put it up, but before he could climb it, this French climber comes in and steals it basically from him. But what he does is instead of using natural holds, he goes in with a freaking chisel and he chisels out the rock, faces it, and it's like, that's not doing it. So anyways.
So he just makes steps on the damn wall and then goes up. Yeah. That's real stupid.
So, but anyways, so both him and Chris go to this Just Do It climb and they become the first Americans to do it. So, and it obviously gives them like huge street cred to, go on because they climb like one of the hardest climbs. So, so while he's, and then he goes back to Yosemite and he does manage to free climb the Silente wall in 3 days. And really
free climb, not free solo.
Yeah, free climb. And so it's at this point, like he really kind of falls in love with Yosemite and El Cap and like really understands like this is the direction that he wants his life to go in, is climbing these big wall climbs. And so, he also goes to Europe at some point as well to climb there while he's kind of this dirtbag lifestyle. And so he meets this girl, her name's Beth, and she's a couple years younger than him. And so their paths kind of cross off and on, and she's an incredible climber as well. She's made a bunch of like first female ascents and youngest ascents of different routes as well. And then they become a couple. And so she was being sponsored by North Face at the time.
Okay.
And so they were going to pay for an expedition to go to Kyrgyzstan, which was apparently this like amazingly beautiful place with these big wall climbing.
Right.
And so they didn't want to be apart because I think they had kind of just established, they had only been together for a few months and they didn't want to go apart.
Sorry, but before this, has he been sponsored at all in any of his climbs or anything? Like, is he getting any money for this?
I don't think so. I think he mentions like there was one of the climbers he went up against when he won that first professional comp. I think he had his own like clothing line, and so he kind of gave him some clothes or something like that. But nothing. You would
think after winning whatever competition that he gets something.
Yeah, I don't think it was anything too big.
Yeah.
Or maybe a couple small ones here or there, but nothing like the North Face or anything like that.
Right.
So so she gets him a job as kind of being the rope rigger for the photographer that's going with them.
Okay.
So there's 4 of them. So there's the one lead climber who's done a bunch of crazy ascents. And this guy, so his name's Jason Smith, he did the first solo ascent of this huge, crazy wall on Baffin Island called Mount Thor. This thing is unreal. If you look at a picture of it, you're just like, I can't believe anyone would even think about climbing this. Also,
by themselves.
Yeah, like unfreaking real. So that's the kind of lead guy, and then so they're both basically the climbers that are going to be taking pictures of. Then they have the photographer, and then they have Tommy doing the ropes for the photographers.
Right.
So
the photographers themselves know how to climb at least a little bit.
The photographer, yeah. Oh yeah.
Was it that guy that whatever? What's his name? Do you remember his name?
No.
Is it Brandon something?
No, I can't remember.
Yeah.
This guy, his name is John Dickey. That's all I know about him. So their plane gets in late into the capital in Kyrgyzstan, and so they don't have time to check in with the U.S. Embassy. And this is August 2000. They don't have time to check in, and so then they go from the capital, and I don't know how long it takes them to get to these walls, but it's kind of like a more remote area.
They don't check in at all. They don't wait till the morning to go to the embassy.
Nope.
Oh, that's not a good idea.
So they had to wait, I guess, for a couple weeks because the weather was really rough. So they're kind of sitting there. Also, the other two guys, they are waiting for like a bag of some of their gear. It didn't get delivered. So they're going around the valley where they're staying, and they're going to like the different army outposts, and they're going to different villages to try and get like a phone to call to see if they can get their bag delivered to them, and just trying to figure out the logistics of getting this stupid bag. So people know that there's Americans in this valley. So they're 2,000.
Except for the embassy.
Except for the embassy, yeah, exactly. So they're up 2,000 feet up on this wall, and called the Yellow Wall.
They started climbing without all their gear?
No, I think they got it by this point.
Okay.
And all of a sudden, they wake up one morning to gunshots being fired at them on the wall. And they're like, what? Obviously, what the fuck?
Yeah.
So they get down, and yeah, what had happened was there was militants from the Islamic movement of Uzbekistan. They had crossed one of the borders into Kyrgyzstan where they were, and they declared jihad against the Uzbekistan and Kyrgyzstan governments. And so it's just chaos, right? So you have the Islamic militants, and then you have the Kyrgyzstan army trying to quell this rebellion.
And it was right by where they were climbing.
Yes. And so what happens is they're being shot at by these Taliban terrorists, basically. And so what happens is they force them down off the wall. They force them to their camp, which these assholes had just gone to their camp.
So it was like warning shots, like, hey, get down.
Yeah, get down.
Yeah.
So they go to their camp. They're so stupid. They just like tear their tents apart. They don't even just like open their tents because they were looking for food because they didn't have any food. So they were just assholes and just like ripped the tents apart. So then at the same time, then they say like, you just grab a bag of like food and warm clothes, and then we're leaving because the Kyrgyzstan army comes in with helicopters, and there's just firefights and they're shooting. Jeez. So they have the 4 climbers and they take them, and it ends up just being the 4 climbers and then these 2 terrorists running around.
So they take them hostage?
Yes, they take them hostage. And so they're walking them. There's a Kyrgyzstan soldier that was actually with them at the very beginning, and then they kill the soldier right in front of them, which is obviously really rough to see.
All right, so hang on a second. Let me see if I can just get this straight here. Excuse me. They're climbing the wall, the 4 of them, and they get shot at by how many people?
I don't know.
There's 2,000 feet up the wall?
Sorry, I think halfway up this 2,000-foot wall.
So that's still a good 300 meters for them to even see them. Well, obviously you'll be able to see them, but like... So they shoot and they wait, like hours for them to descend?
I guess so. Well, not hours. I mean, it's pretty fast to descend, right? You're just rappelling
Well, I don't know what kind of... If they're just...
You're just rappelling down. It's pretty fast.
Oh, they're not bringing the...
they just leave
the marks up. They just
they just leave everything. Yeah.
All right. So
you're being shot at. You're just leaving everything.
No, but even then, because if they take the ropes, they got to set up the ropes at every checkpoint, right, of every pitch, like you were saying. Anyways, whatever. So they get down, and you don't know how many soldiers there were?
At the beginning, I don't know.
Okay, so they get down, they're soldiers, and obviously they don't speak the language, so there's just whatever. So you said they were with a soldier at the same time?
They were with they had captured a Kyrgyzstan soldier.
Oh, okay, so he wasn't with the climbing group. So 4 of them, they come down. There was also a soldier. They slash all their tents at the base because they had to set stuff at their base camp or whatever. And then they tried to get their food.
Got their food.
They got their food, and then they just took them hostage.
Yeah. Well, they just started running because they were just forcing them to run because the Kyrgyzstan army was coming in with helicopters.
Right at the same time. So okay.
Yeah. So they had to run, and they were like forcing them to run away
with them into the bush or whatever. Yes. Okay. So they run. Yeah. And as they're running,
people die, and then eventually
because the army's shooting
at them, and then eventually they didn't really see it. It sounds like it was like very chaotic.
Well, but it's like an active firefight.
And what ended up happening was they were left with these 2 captors and the Kyrgyzstan soldier, and then they just killed this Kyrgyzstan soldier because he was of no more use to them.
Yeah, but they didn't kill those 4.
No.
And what happened to those 2?
So what happened was over the course of 6 days, they were leading them away. They didn't know where they were taking them. So they were
captured for 6 days.
Yes.
Okay, so then after those helicopters, they got away.
They got away.
Okay, well then carry on.
Yeah, and so what happened was over the course of 6 days, they didn't realize it until kind of the end, but they realized these militants were leading them in this big circle back to their camp. And because I don't know if they didn't know where they were going or what they were doing, because it was just the 2 of them. And so the whole time while they're being led around, they're trying to figure out, well, what do we do? Like, we need to escape. They're going to kill us. Like, we have to figure out what to do. 4 against 2 here. So what happened is Beth really didn't want to talk about killing these 2 militants at all. But and so then Tommy kind of sided with her. And then the other 2 guys were just like, yeah, we have to come up with a plan. And that's like all they talked about was coming up with a plan to either get away or to kill these guys. Yeah. And so eventually, there's some point where someone's going to sleep and all that stuff. And so eventually, and so the whole time on this like 6-day walk or whatever, they're having, I mean, it's a hilly mountainous area. So these militants are having to go up these like walls and stuff like that. And so they clearly don't know how to climb. And so the climbers are helping them. So there's some form of like trust almost that's formed between that the terrorists are just like, oh, like trust them to like lead them the right way up and around. So there's that kind of like weird trust that is formed, that they don't think that the militants don't think that these guys are going to turn on them. Right. All right. Which is important. Yeah. So then they get to a point where they're back at their camp. They're close to their camp. And the one terrorist was going to go to their camp and collect more food, whatever they didn't get. And then the other militant was going to take them up this mountain area, this kind of climb area, and meet at the top with the other terrorist at the top. Okay. So obviously this is their chance. And so they're climbing up, and the one and they're just like, we got to push them. We just got to push them off this wall. That's what's going to have to happen. Someone's going to have to push them. So the 2 other climbers aren't close enough. The closest person is Tommy. And so he pushes them. Jeez. Yeah. And then they get to the top. They end up running to the, I don't know how. Did they take his gun? They tried to, but they couldn't. They just pushed him. And so they knew that this guy was eventually going to come and meet them. The other terrorist was going to come and meet them. Yeah. So they just took off running to one of like the Kyrgyzstan army bases, where they knew where it was from having to go around all the valley to try and find their bags. So they knew where this base was. So they managed to run there and then all 4 of them together. Yeah. But wasn't the other one that was climbing this other route, was he by himself then? Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So it was stupid on the terrorists' part. So the whole thing sounds stupid. Like, like they had a gunfight and a firefight and helicopters, and they did not just search the area to try to find them? Yeah. I don't know. He didn't talk about it. So yeah, that seems a little bit strange, because it's like, how far can you get? Not very far at all, especially if you're going through rocky terrain where you have to climb things. It's like, it's weird. It seems very weird. It's a crazy whirlwind when they get back, and just they think like Tommy's having a really hard time, because he's just like, what kind of person does that make me, that I'm able to push this guy? Yeah. And he goes on and on about it, but it's just like, the kind of person you are is you're a kind of person that can survive and do what you need to do to survive. These guys are not going to hesitate. You've already seen them kill at least one person. They're not going to hesitate to fucking kill you. Yeah. It's one thing to be in the movies where it's like, well, you just do what you do and you shrug it off. But it's like, you still killed somebody. Yeah. Right. But it's also, obviously it's in a situation where it's like, it's you or me kind of thing. So you got to, Yeah. I think some people though would just turn the other cheek, that they just physically can't do it. If it's my survival, I would totally do it. Well, no, I'm not saying you, but I see it's like people that are like, study Jainism or whatever. Isn't that the one that's like, you can't even harm like an ant kind of thing? Yeah. So I or some people that just physically wouldn't be able to do it. Yeah. I think those are people out there. So, we could do it, but I mean, I'd still be, I don't know. It'd be still something that would weigh heavy on you. But the way he was talking about it in the book, I just really wish someone would have helped him reframe it. Because it's just like, because he was having thoughts like, am I an evil person? Am I not? Then it's just like, no, you're not evil. Yeah, I would never think that. But it's just like all of those thoughts, and like he was having a really hard time reconciling that he could be the type of person to kill someone. It's like it's you did not go out and actively say, I'm going to go take somebody hostage or whatever and like kill them in cold blood. Yeah, even in war, there's supposed to be things where if you're not fighting, you capture someone. And then there's supposed to be rules. You don't just shoot someone because, when they're surrendering. Yeah, exactly. Or you have the hostage, you just shoot the hostage. That's not supposedly how war is supposed to be fought, right? So, but if you're in that situation, you're not putting yourself in that situation. You're saving your own life and saving the life of your friends and your other
your your rock climbing buddies. So
yeah,
I think you shouldn't feel bad about that at all. It's not. Oh, excuse me. It's not murder per se. Well, I guess it is still murder, but it's not like malicious. I'm a murderer because I like killing people. Yeah,
it's
exactly. Self-defense.
Yeah.
Like you'd be held up completely in a court of law. You know, you wouldn't go to jail.
Yeah.
You know, in some places you'd be a hero, right? Because you just saved everyone's life.
Well, he is a hero. He did save their lives by doing that because you just don't know what would have happened. So, and I don't know, maybe it's different. Like he was so young. He was only like 22 when this happened. So he was really, really young. And I don't know, like I can see obviously having that perspective when you're that young, but being older now and having kids too, because it's just like 100% I'm going to kill if I have to for the survival of my children. Like 100%.
You need to calm down. You're like, listen, man, don't get in my way. You cut me off in traffic. It's on.
You know. I go mama bear, right? I go mama bear over small things. So something like that. Yeah. I'm sorry. If it's between my kids and you're going to die. Like that's just what's going to happen.
Okay, all right. Let's all know not to mess around. Jeez.
So I think maybe having like us being older and having that perspective, it's different than when you're young, right? I think is probably part of it too. Like I wonder how he feels about it now because he's a father. I wonder what his perspective would be.
Or like if he was there climbing and his kid was there with him.
Yeah, what his perspective would be. It'd be interesting to know. Mm-hmm. So they get back. And so Beth is also having like a really, really rough time. Like she barely leaves the house. And
I mean, you spent 6 days in
100%
at gunpoint, you know.
So they stay at her parents' house in California, and his parents come to visit, obviously because they want to see their son after him being like captive for 6 days. And so but she starts to get pissed, like Beth starts to get pissed because his dad is pretty like boisterous and always trying to look on the good side of things. And I guess that just wasn't her jam. And she then asked Tommy to ask them to leave, which
she asked
Tommy
to ask his parents to leave. This house. What house is it in?
It's in her parents' house. So that's I don't know. That's rough.
Yeah.
So like,
I'd just be like, well, I'm leaving with my family then.
Yeah, but he didn't. So
yeah.
I know. So
can I skip ahead? Are they still together?
What do you think?
I think no. Like I would have left then. It's like, well, that's okay. We're not.
No.
I mean, you go through that traumatic event, and you kind of want to stay together, but
especially when it's at the very beginning of your relationship, right? So
yeah. Well, you kind of tell what that person, you know, what they value, I guess, in a way. I mean, I don't know. I can't say because I've never been in a situation where I've been held hostage at gunpoint for 6 days and we had to kill someone to survive. And then we get there and then my newly formed partner's parents are just overwhelming for me.
Yeah.
But to ask them to leave is a little bit much, but
yeah,
maybe you can kind of see why if she just can't cope with that stuff. What if it's a sensory thing? I don't know. I have no idea, right? Everyone's got their own thing.
But what happens is, so eventually, and there's a couple of things we got to go through first, but they do eventually get married. But then what happens is they become, especially her, they become so codependent, like they can't even do their own thing. And like he wants to go climb and she's like crying, talking to him on the phone, like, I want you to come back. And it's like she can't even be on her own ever.
But is that just because of the trauma?
Yeah. But it's like they don't really get counseling. Like they try to go to a therapist once, but even like the therapist, like this is such almost like a one-off situation. A regular therapist is not really going to know what to do. Like he was comparing what they went through to like a rape survivor, which is a different thing. Like it's still a trauma, but it's a different type of trauma. Yeah. So they couldn't even get that. But his
seems like you're like an army, you know, kind of somebody that knows how to deal with someone who's been like in combat
captured.
situations.
Yeah, exactly. So, but he felt an itch to go back to Yosemite. He was just like, I just feel that pull, and like that was his therapy, was getting back on the wall and climbing and being physical and being out in nature. But she was just so hesitant about getting back out there, and so he would go, but she would be like sad or whatever the whole time he was gone. So it was really rough. And like,
how long after the incident did they get married?
Do you know what? I don't
it sounds like
know.
They got married like right away.
No, they didn't. I think it was like it was 3 years after. So they were captured in 2000 and they got married in 2003.
And so that whole time she's just not doing anything anymore?
Yeah, so she's starting to get back out on the wall. Eventually she does come back out to Yosemite and they free climb. They do first free climbs of a bunch of, or a couple different routes on Yosemite.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so especially this one, it's called the Mirror Wall. They free it together, and he feels like this euphoria, like he's done this and it's amazing. But that feeling just didn't last for her. She just always go back into this like depression.
Yeah, it sounds like she's stuck in a place.
Yeah. So, but like he's like really kind of like starting to really like hit his stride and like, yes, this is exactly what I'm supposed to be doing with my life, is doing these amazing climbs and everything. And so she eventually returns to it because obviously like she's sponsored by the North Face, so she knows she has to get back out for her sponsorship. But she just goes nuts. Like and she doesn't really tell anyone she's going back because she doesn't want the pressure and the scrutiny of trying to get back on the wall. And then she just goes nuts with her training, like obsessive about her training. So she just pours everything into there. So
this is while they're married or before they're married?
Or just like kind of, I think before they're married. Okay. So, but he
must have known, obviously.
Oh, yeah, of course. And so, but what he was saying was, he said, as in many sports, climbing is about pain tolerance. Our ability to endure had been completely recalibrated. So having to go through a situation like that, like obviously your pain tolerance, your baseline is going to be different now, having gone through that and knowing
for sure.
Yeah. And he says, like, I didn't fully understand the extent to which she needed my presence for emotional strength. Our ability to live independent lives faded away. So yeah. So it's just, he just does, like he continues to go like hard and just like doing all these incredible climbs. And so he starts doing like harder and harder things. And so one of the things he does was speed climbing. And so he was like, how fast can I get up the nose? And so, he did it in like 4.5 hours, where usually people take like days to do it.
Yeah.
So he's doing that. And then he does, what else does he do? He's like, I want to see if I can do like 2 climbs in 24 hours. And so he does that, like 2 of these big climbs. And then because he hasn't been through enough, they have this house in Estes Park where his parents live in Colorado. Okay. It's like a really small little tiny house. And so he's building, it's kind of like an elevated platform for their washer dryer. And so he's pushing wood through the table saw.
Oh, yeah.
And he cuts his finger off.
Which one?
So this one.
The index?
His left, and it's...
half of it?
Yeah.
Oh, that's like one of your prime... It's not a thumb, but it's... I mean, all fingers are important.
Yes, yeah. So they try and reattach it, and it just doesn't take. And so they just send him home, and they're just like, your career's over, basically. And he's like...
No, it's not.
No, it's not.
No, it's just, of course not.
So he goes hard with physio, like whatever he can do. So he like exposes it to hot and cold and puts it in like different types of textures and just like really beats it up until like the nerves are just kind of shot. So he can still grab things with it. Yeah, exactly. His dad makes him this like cool little like I don't know what it is. It's like a weight kind of machine a finger strengthening machine to work it all the time. His dad just sounds like the cutest guy ever. He's just always helping him with stuff. So then he goes back.
That's always my biggest. I love the idea of woodworking, and I'd love to have a shop, but like having that one accident and having something cut off like your fingers, because they're so precious.
I know.
That's why they have this thing called a saw saw. It's really, really cool. It's a table saw, but it senses like what, I don't know how, it just senses like organic matter or whatever. So like as soon as it senses a finger, it immediately shoots up this stop thing, because you know how it has blades, right? It goes into the blade and then immediately stops it, and then it retracts down as well. And you see this thing, how fast it goes, and you'd have a guy like going like this, and you go onto the saw, and then you'd see it makes huge noise and goes in and it stops. But I mean, if you're like, because the thing is, if you're cutting through a saw, like if it happens that it's all like it eats you, it basically like forces your hand in, right? Because it's like it pulls through the wind. So it pulls it in. So people have gotten cut you can still get cut with it, but like it'll save like your fingers, right? Because it goes in. So you see it, yeah, they do it like they'll have a hot dog, they'll throw it in there and the hot dog will be fine. And this, yeah, so it's really cool.
That's
and
so
I'm like,
cool.
I want to get it.
Yeah.
But it's like $10,000 or
$1,000,000.
whatever
Yeah.
for like the one where you get the cheap table saw at, you know, Crappy Tire for like $250 or whatever.
Yeah.
So,
yeah,
you know, the technology's there now, which is really cool to help with that. So
that's really cool.
But yeah.
So 3 weeks after he was released from the hospital, he enters a bouldering comp and he gets third.
3 weeks. Yeah.
Yeah. And so then he has to learn obviously to climb differently with losing that piece of his finger. And so he goes and he just climbs all the old sport routes that he used to do just to get back into it. Yeah. Because he said he had to shift his weight more to his feet, to use core strength to keep me close to the wall so I could use my legs and spare my arms to refine my technique.
And that's actually really good because a lot of the good power and a lot of good technique comes from your legs. Your legs are a lot stronger than your arms. So I don't even know if it made him a better climber. Maybe it made him better with his technique, I would imagine.
You'll see. So. I'm pretty sure it does.
Yeah.
So then 3 months after leaving the hospital, he climbs a 514B.
Yeah.
Like unreal.
Yeah.
And so then one of his other goals was there's this... I forget where it was, but there was this route he had put up called Kryptonite, and right beside this route was another route that he named Flex Luthor that he was working on, and people had kind of thought it was like a 514D, so like that's like the highest, right? So
for at this stage now, I think the highest is there might be like a 516 A. Maybe I can't remember, but there's definitely 515s for sure.
Oh yeah. So he climbs up this the thing with like having to classify a route is it's by consensus, right? So you have a bunch of different climbers that climb it and then decide, well, that's a 5 whatever
it is. Yeah.
And so he was looking at this route and being like, yeah, it's like a 514D. Most people, he's been the only one to climb it. So he does climb it. He's been the only one to climb it, but most people think it should be a 515,
right?
Based on the difficulty.
And this would be the first of its kind, almost. A 515. Like
at the time. Yeah. At the time, it would have been. Yeah. So because this was early 2000s.
Like anything, everything just keeps getting harder and harder, and techniques evolve, and climbers evolve, and they just get better and better.
Yeah. Yeah, and so so they, like I said, they get married in 2003. She's still having a lot of issues. And then she even gets injured, and it's a bad injury. It's the sesamoid bone in your foot. And this one's like it's a really small bone, but it takes like a really long time to heal. So that kind of fucks with her as well.
In the actual joint, kind of like all the carpals or whatever.
No, it's in her foot.
No, I know, but I know.
I don't know. I didn't.
The foot has all those little bones.
I didn't look it up. So yeah. Yeah, so that was obviously really rough. Sorry, I'm just trying to see. Yeah, so the speed climbing, so he'd freeze the nose in 11 hours. He runs down and then he free climbs another one, free rider, in 11 hours, which is like, this stuff is just not done. And he's doing like all the training, the ancillary training in the off season as well. Like he's doing endurance and weight training, and even like bouldering and sport climbing, just to make him like a better like all around climber.
He's doing lots of indoor climbing then for bouldering.
Yeah. Well, and of course, like you see pictures of his house, he has like those boards on them. What are those called? Because you go up, like you
just
have
slats. Yeah, I totally can't remember what they're called.
Yeah.
Just throw a picture of them up or whatever, like a training thing, because they'll have like the circle things as well too, so you can do the holds. Yeah.
So, but she's still like, there's like this growing kind of chasm within the relationship. It continues to grow. They're also known at this point as like the first couple of climbing, because they're both like superior climbers, obviously. And you can tell like how he talks about her and their relationship. Like he dreamt of having kids with her and of this like big kind of fairy tale relationship, but you just feel like it's not reciprocated on her end. And obviously this is his account. You don't know what her side of it is.
Yeah. I mean, the sounds of it is just like, she like never left I'm just at the camp, right? But she just never left that spot where they were held captive for 6 days. And what is it? Deep Space Nine. He's like, why do you live here? You still live here in this moment in past, right? So it seems like she still lives there.
Yeah. So then in 2006,
which is not her fault. It just seems like she needed a way somehow.
And I don't know what type of help they got, and I feel like if maybe she had gotten some help, she would have been able to move
maybe
past
he wasn't there to help her as well too, because he didn't know how to deal with it, or to help her deal with it anyways.
I think so, yeah. And he's dealing with his own trauma of the experience and killing someone.
Seems like he dealt with it with his climbing. And
by the way, I forgot to mention that the guy actually didn't die.
Oh, the guy.
He didn't die.
Well, how high was the fall?
I don't know. It was high enough that all 4 of them were like, yeah, there's no way he's living. There's no way he can live.
Well, how did they know that he survived?
Because they found him. Some journalists found him and interviewed him and said, yeah, that guy pushed me.
They interviewed?
Yeah.
And what did he think? Does he think that was okay? Or
well, I don't
is he
think
like, well,
I didn't see the full interview, but like
how did he find him? Is he in jail?
Yeah. Yep. He's in jail. Yeah. So anyways, I forgot to add that at the end.
Yeah.
So he in 2006.
Oh man, that would suck because that guy knows who that guy is.
I know.
Not like.
Yeah. So in 2006, he gets invited to go to Patagonia, which is South America, and where like these huge crazy mountains are, like the Andes. And so they climb this mountain called the Fitzroy, and for him this is all new because it's like alpine climbing as well, so you have snow involved, and it's like a different thing than going to Yosemite. Yeah, so they climb this huge mountain called Fitzroy, and you see this thing, and it looks like the mountains there are so much different looking. They're like these like big jagged teeth looking things, like they're really nuts looking.
Well, because they're still being formed, I guess.
Yeah, like they're pushing through.
Where the other ones they're weathered. They've been there for a long time, and
exactly. So it's like a different thing. So he climbs it, and afterwards he says, "Through the struggle and bone pulsing exhaustion, I found a profound clarity had emerged, as if I had tapped into a place inside too often forgotten, where you are stripped bare and granted a glimpse into who you truly are." A place where you could look at the impossible and make it real. I'd never been so alive. So it's just like, this is totally where he's supposed to be.
Yeah.
So,
how's he funding all of this?
I think he doesn't talk very much about his sponsors, but he has sponsors by this point, like all his climbing, he has sponsors. Okay. So in the summer of 2006, also I can't even believe this. They got super lucky and they are able to buy a 1/4 acre lot within Yosemite in this like small pocket of private land within the park.
Oh, wow.
They buy this lot for $42,000.
Oh my God.
Yeah. And so they build.
You want to know what it's worth now.
I know. And so they build their own house. Like they start building their own house here.
Him and his wife.
Yep. But this is when things just really start to go downhill. Like
for them. Yeah.
It starts out building this house, like this big, amazing project, but then it starts taking like long, and then it just starts to deteriorate.
Are they actually building it themselves, or do they have like builders and whatever to come?
They started doing it themselves with a little bit of help, but then it became to a point where his parents offered to pay for contractors to finish it for them.
Right.
So,
especially if you never built a house before.
Yeah, and so then they had friends that they had met in Yosemite, like climber friends. And they were engaged, and then the guy was rethinking this engagement and wanted to break it off. And so Beth was talking to this guy around this time. She would go on for bike rides with him. She would go and take phone calls away from Tommy talking to this guy. And then eventually she asks Tommy to leave and to go live with his parents while she kind of figures her shit out. Meanwhile, he doesn't really know what's going on with this other guy.
She's having an affair.
And she says to him, and he's trying to do everything to kind of keep this relationship because he has this like fairy tale idea.
Right.
She even tells him to like break off his relationship with his dad. And so he writes this letter to his dad saying, I don't know what, he doesn't really get into it, but it like devastates his dad because they were so close. And so,
I don't know. It sounds like she has more issues. Well, that whole one, I don't want your parents here.
Yeah.
And then that's something completely different.
Yeah. I really feel like she was almost jealous of his really close relationship to his dad almost, because it's always
that's
like
her
picking on her dad. I don't know. Yeah, so then she says, so she tells him to go live in Colorado with his parents or in their house, and because they still have this house in Estes Park near his parents. It's just a really small.
Does after he wrote this have to write this letter?
Yeah, she tells him, it's not really like, can you just go stay there for a couple weeks so I can get my head in the game, figure out what I want. So weeks turn into months, and then she blames his parents for everything basically. And but again, he's like doing everything to try to make it work. And then she says,
at what point?
And then she says, well, I want to be married, but I want to date this other guy, this other climber guy. And he's like, no. Yeah. So they end up divorcing in 2009.
Oh, well, guaranteed that she had an affair.
Oh yeah, I think so. So to kind of get himself through it, he starts working on free climbing the Dawn Wall and figuring out how it can be done.
Free soloing?
Free climbing.
Free climbing.
The Dawn Wall.
Just by himself.
And so this is the wall that we were talking about at the beginning, where no one thought it could possibly be free climbed because it's like this sheer face because of all of these different features of it. Yeah. But he's just determined, and he just sits and he just starts working on it and figuring out the different pitches and how to work it and everything like that. So
he lived. I guess he doesn't have the house anymore there.
Yeah, eventually she buys him out of the house. He keeps the one in Estes Park in Colorado, but so she...
Oh, he keeps the awesome one in the...
No.
Estes is with his parents.
Is in Colorado.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
So then
That's too bad.
Yeah. So then he goes... This is just like a small little part, but it was really funny, so I wanted to talk about it. But he goes back to Colorado and kind of gets back into the social scene in Colorado. His friends kind of get him out and try and get him to the bar and just to have some fun. And then he goes back to Patagonia with this guy. His name is Josh Safety Fifth Wharton instead of safety first, safety fifth. I just thought it was so funny, but it was because
that's like his nickname.
Yeah. So it was because he climbed these huge routes with like no first aid, no like bivy gear, like none of this stuff. Right. It was just so funny. I just had to mention
until something bad happens.
I know. So then he meets another girl in Colorado, and her name's Becca, and she's like completely different from Beth, and he's just like
this is what a healthy relationship would look like.
Yeah, and it's just like a breath of fresh air because she's just so happy and independent and just brings this like new life to his life. And so then he also finds a new climbing partner to help him on the Dawn Wall route. And so this guy's name is Kevin Jorgensen, and was this like huge phenom within the bouldering community and had never done any big wall climbing.
Right.
But I think Kevin was kind of like almost starstruck and like really excited to work on this project with Tommy. So you
would have seen him in magazines.
Oh, yeah, of course.
Even YouTube at this point.
Yeah. So so he talks about like they had to commit all of these moves to memory, like for each pitch and everything, and just discussing like such nuanced detail of this wall and how to climb it, and just rehearsing the sequences. And then even La Sportiva, so for climbing shoes, so they even let him design a new shoe specifically for this climb.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so I thought that was like really, really cool.
Yeah.
And he says the wall exists like a canvas, and it is your vision, ability, and creativity that turn it into a route. So I thought that was really cool too, how he was thinking about putting this route up. So they make their first free attempt of this wall in 2012. After working on it, obviously this is like 6 years now that they've been working on it, trying to figure it out. And they managed to get up about a third of the wall in 10 days, but then the weather hits and they get like weathered out. And so
is it easy to climb down?
Well, they just rappel down, so they don't.
That's what I mean.
They don't down climb; they just rappel.
Well, get down. Yeah,
okay. Exactly. So, and they're trying to figure out like what the best season is to climb it, and so they figure like summer's too hot, spring's too wet, so they figure like the best time. Not even in fall. They figure the best time is in the winter because it's with the friction, I guess, that the cold induces on the wall. Like apparently that's the best time to climb it. So. Okay. So that's what they do. But the problem is that him and Kevin Kevin is quite a few years younger than him. And so Kevin, they're just very different people. Like he didn't really feel almost like he could like make like a connection with Kevin in a way. Like,
but they've been together for 6 years.
I know, but it's just like he was very like didn't talk a lot about himself or say much about like his life outside of climbing. So Tommy felt like, I feel like that was maybe a little bit weird. And so he was also, part of it was he was more interested in how to make climbing a living and like a business for himself. And so he was using a lot of social media and on his phone all the time, which kind of like really irritated Tommy, because he's just like, I feel like you just need to focus, and you're not like focusing with your phone in your face the whole time when you're taking rests. So anyway.
Yeah, well, that's a good point, because I mean that answers the questions that I always have. It's like, well, how are you funding all this kind of stuff, right?
Yeah.
So,
and so
a lot of climbers now, it's like anything.
Oh,
it's a business. It's a big business.
It's a big business, and that's all Kevin ever wanted to talk about. And Tommy's like, I get it. He's like, he's young, he's not established like me, so I get he's trying to make this. He's trying to hustle, get like his living made, kind of thing. And he was being Kevin was being sponsored by Adidas, which is that's pretty big.
Well, that's even good, because they're not even climbing. They don't make climbing gear, as far as I know, anyways.
Yeah. So and then I have to go back and tell you. So he talks about meeting Alex Honnold in 2008, and so he just talks about like how paradigm shifting Alex's climbs are. And so Alex's nickname was No Big Deal Alex, because everything was just like, oh, no big deal to him. And he's always like trying to convince Tommy to free climb and like free solo.
How good of friends are they? I mean, they know each other. Are they friends?
Oh yeah. And so he's just they actually do the 3 biggest features in Yosemite together in a day. So they do Mount Watkins, they do El Cap, and then they do Half Dome, which is this other, I don't know, in free solo you see Half Dome, like it's huge. And so they do that in a day. And again, it's like Alex, it's just like always like, no big deal. No,
Alex is go. He's crazy.
Yeah. And this is why he says, like, many people ask me why I didn't ask Alex to come with me on the Dawn Wall. And he's just like, it wasn't his jam, because he just wants to climb it and be done kind of thing. Not like take the time. Like,
well, he took the time when he took the time, but that's when he wants a free solo something. That's so like, this
is just not his jam, right? Like not what he's interested in. And so him and Becca do end up getting married, and then they have their first kid, who they name Fitz, after this Fitzroy Tower that he climbed. And so Fitz is, but they eventually like take Fitz like all over Europe with them, because he kind of leaves the Dawn Wall for a while, because he's just like, there's other climbs I want to do. Like, I need to kind of leave it. It's becoming too obsessed, and maybe it's never going to happen. I just kind of need, maybe keep it in the back of my mind, but I need to move on, kind of thing. So then in 2014, he goes with Alex to Patagonia to do the Fitz Traverse. And so what the Fitz Traverse is it's this traverse of 7 different peaks. In I think the tallest one is the Fitzroy Mountain that he had originally climbed. So it's to do this traverse. No one had done it before. And I'll show you a picture, because this shit looks fucking crazy, and it's unreal that they did this.
Oh my god, that's the route that they went.
So you're going up and down mountains. It's just,
and this is cold too, because there's all
there's snow everywhere.
So do they have like ice? Or are they ice climbing? They don't know ice climbing. He said he did in South America a little bit, but
well, this is in South America, so he's not ice climbing, but it's still rock climbing, but there's like the added snow and ice issue with it that he talks a little bit about. But yes,
give me that picture too, so that I can post it on the video so people can see.
So it's a 3-mile long traverse, and it crosses 7 major summits involving 12,000 vertical feet of technical climbing. And so Becca was really worried, because no big deal Alex, right? He's kind of laissez-faire, and even when Tommy tells him like the equipment he needs to buy, he basically only bought half of the stuff they needed, because he was just like, oh, we'll figure it out. We'll just make do.
That's what Alex said?
Yeah.
Yeah, I know.
And then not only that, he brings the completely wrong crampons. He brings crampons that were supposed to fit over like hiking boots, and they're not taking hiking boots with them.
No.
So eventually 2 other hikers, or 2 other climbers, who were trying to do the Fitz Traverse as well, they end up bailing, and so they give them their crampons that are gonna fit over their shoes. Yeah, so he's really lucky. So he does, and then even like Alex falls into a crevasse, and he's just like, oh yeah, it's no big deal. Like, and so Tommy says this like really interesting thing about Alex's amygdala, because so your amygdala is in your brain and it's where you process fear. It's where your fight or flight kind of comes
he doesn't
in.
have one.
And he says, it crossed my mind that Alex's amygdala might be malfunctioning. But I also understood that one of the things that sets him apart is his ability to look at situations logically while others respond emotionally.
Yeah.
So.
Well, that's the thing, because we watched his free solo movie, and then like he's training with like, isn't this like his girlfriend who's like not even a climber at all?
I know.
And
they're
like,
actually married and have a kid now, but
right.
yeah.
But it's just like, it's just like, what do you do? And then like she was belaying him, and then like he fell, and she didn't maybe do a job properly, and he fell a lot, and he broke his foot, right?
I forget.
Yeah,
what
and
it
it's
was.
just like,
It
well, yeah. What do you like?
And then he fell
so
again
weird.
because of her. Like he fell 2 times because of her. He had never fallen seriously ever until
He's getting
she was climbing
rookie
with him.
To
yeah.
It's you know. It's just very strange. It's like, why would you make those decisions? I guess if you're somebody that's like, yeah, whatever, doesn't matter, no big deal, then I guess it's not a big deal.
Yeah.
But for me, I'd be like, yeah, no, I need somebody who knows what they're doing.
Yeah.
Doing out here, or at least have a little bit of training. Like it wouldn't even take that long. Like,
I know.
but even a couple months, getting used to it in like a gym.
Yeah.
And then going out.
Yeah.
Anyways,
it was
whatever.
Just,
no big deal.
I thought that was
it's no big deal.
I thought that was really interesting.
Someone who free climbs 3,000 feet.
Fuck.
Yeah, it definitely is no big deal. You have to have that switch turned off, because
I think they
for
did
that
do
one slip.
Oh, I know.
And you're dead. Like you have to not think about that, because.
Well, didn't they do in Free Solo? Didn't they do like a MRI or CT of his brain to look at his amygdala?
I don't know. I can't remember. It's been a while since we've seen it.
Yeah, it has been. But it's interesting. There was another climber. You haven't seen the documentary, but I can't suggest it enough. It's called The Alpinist, and it's Alex Honnold, but even Alex Honnold calls this guy fucking crazy because he free solos ice.
Oh, yeah, that's crazy.
Yeah, so Marc-Andre Leclerc, and he's Canadian.
Right, from Quebec, right?
No, from Squamish,
BC. Right.
Yeah, so and Alex Honnold's like, yeah, that guy's insane.
Only because he doesn't know ice. Maybe that's why.
Yeah, I don't know.
But yeah.
I don't know.
But still, ice seems it's like not only you're dependent on your skill, but it's like maybe something that could be dislodged from the ice. You know what I mean? If something happens on the ice, whereas on a rock, at least you get your hold, and your hold's good, right?
Yeah, you would hope.
It's not going to break off. Well, mountains don't have a tendency to just break. Yeah. But ice.
Mm-hmm. Oh, you can't. It's much more of a variable.
That's crazy.
Yeah. So when they're climbing, when they're doing this Fitztraverse, he says the sixth sense seemed to warn us of each loose rock or hidden patch of black ice. And what I found really interesting about this is, I don't know if it was like a sixth sense or if it's like pattern recognition that you get from experience. And I forget the podcast that I was listening to that talked about this, but it was talking about how people that are have been in a field for a really long time are able to recognize something before it happens. And so the main example was like nurses or doctors where they knew someone was going to have a stroke before they had a stroke or like a heart attack or something before it happens. And I don't know if that's like recognize like an unconscious or like recognizing some sort of feature or some sort of movement or something on someone and knowing that that's going to happen. But I feel like for them, it's a really similar thing, like being able to recognize features in the rock or how snow or ice or something is
I don't doubt it at all. You're there the whole time.
I just thought that was really interesting.
It's the same thing like people that play poker. You know, they've played so many, and they could just read people. Yeah. Like it's not as crazy as like that the Matt Damon movie Rounders or whatever. But if you're doing something, it's like you can just tell what someone's thinking because you've spent so much time analyzing people's face. Like those people that can tell people's whether they're lying or not by their facial expressions, right? It's like you recognize patterns because so many things in nature are just patterns. They're just patterns that just kind of repeat.
Well, and I think like evolutionarily, that's as humans, that's why people are like, oh, I see this in the clouds. It's like we're always trying to make something in a pattern as well. Yeah. So, yeah. So they come back from that. They do that, I think, in 5 days, which is insane to me. Yeah, so 5 days they do that. So
without dying, so that's
without dying, so that's good. No big deal, Alex. And so then he is then determined. he needs to do another attempt of the Dawn Wall. And so 2015, so him and Kevin agree to meet December after Christmas 2014, and then they start climbing and start putting up like free climbing it. And so and he does he practices, and again his training is just insane. He talks about his training. He's like 14-hour training days. He's just he's running at altitude. He's just doing whatever he can to just build up the endurance that this thing is going to take. And so they do pretty well until they get to this one pitch where it's a traverse, and it's a really difficult, and I don't think either of them had ever completely freed that pitch before, like in all of their practicing. And so so he gets it on, I think, his like first or second try. He's able to do it. But Kevin just can't do it. Can't frickin' get it. He can't stick it. The tips of his fingers are just trashed because of all of the holds. And so he keeps trying, and Tommy's just like kind of sitting, and he's like getting cold. Like it's now 2 days and he hasn't climbed anything. And then Kevin finally is just like, well, I'm just gonna rest for a couple days. I'm just gonna rest my fingers. And and Tommy's like, okay, well, I'm gonna climb up to this like one pitch, like, and it's pretty high up. It's called Wino Tower. Like I'll climb up to there, and then I'll wait. Like I'll kind of we'll figure it out from there what we're gonna do if you can make this pitch go. In the meantime, it's a fucking media frenzy because of course Kevin's on the social media, and it's just nuts. They have their own film crew with them to film this climb, since it's their attempt to be like the first ascent. And it's just a media circus, like the people down in the...
And he doesn't even know about this?
No, he does, but he doesn't expect it to get... It's like on the news, like every night people are watching them, and they keep talking about it. It's insane. Not only that, like, he's like, they get so much, like as media does, they get so many things wrong. They keep showing pictures of Half Dome instead of like
where they actually are.
Yeah, so stupid. So yeah, and then of course the pressure on Kevin to get this traverse is immense because they're like, oh, Kevin's holding Tommy back and blah blah blah, and then people are like, oh, well, should Kevin just graciously bow out and let Tommy finish this climb? They've been working on this is their 7th year attempting to hit this. Like, should he just graciously bow out? And so Tommy gets to this one pitch before the Wino Tower. He gets to this one pitch where it's a dyno. And the only way that they have found to get to go up is this 8-foot dyno that they have to do. And so
just gotta Tom Cruise it.
He's never been able to hit this dyno. Neither of them have been.
They've tried it before?
Oh yeah. Well, yeah, because they're the whole years they've been working on it. They're trying
so they just go at different spots.
Yeah, exactly. To try and work. Yeah, exactly. And so he even measured it and accurately did everything and set up the exact dyno in his gym to practice it and everything. Just couldn't get it. So he eventually then finds he down climbs and then climbs up and around this dyno. So he does. So Tommy doesn't do it.
Yeah.
So eventually, after a week, Kevin finally gets the traverse.
What level of difficulty is this traverse?
I think it's a 514. Yeah. It's
514.
I don't know.
A, B, C, D.
I'm not sure. So then Tommy gets to the top of the Wino Tower too. This is before Kevin is able to get across, because once he gets to Wino Tower, it's pretty easy climbing to the top, and it's not that much further to the top.
Yeah.
And so he gets there, and he's just like so overwhelmed with emotion, knowing like he's definitely going to be able to finish this climb he's been working on for 7 years.
Don't celebrate too early.
And so he's just like, it doesn't matter how long it takes Kevin to hit this traverse. Like, I want him to feel this feeling, and I want to complete this with him. Mm-hmm. So he goes back down and he tells that to Kevin. And I think that took the pressure off Kevin, knowing like, no matter what's going to happen, Tommy's going to wait for me. And so then he's able to do it. And then not only is he able to do it, as he's climbing to meet Tommy's high point, he hits the dyno. He hits the dyno. Yeah. And so then they get to the top and they finish it. So
they live happily ever
So
after.
it took them 19 days.
Oh wow.
Yeah, to get to the top of this thing. So
they're the first people to ever do it.
Like free climbing. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And so him and Beth have they have 2 kids now. So yeah, and so that's the story. And the documentary, it's called The Dawn Wall, and it just documents the whole climb and everything.
Yeah, because if they had cameras and all that stuff, so they should be able to take a look at it.
And it's really really great. It's really
You've seen it? Is it on Amazon or?
I think I saw it on Netflix, but I actually just rewatched it and it was free on YouTube.
Back when we had Netflix. Yeah.
So I'll link to it if it's still available on YouTube. But it's such a great docu. If you like climbing, it's really good.
Yeah.
I think I watched it before Free Solo, and I thought it was really really good.
Yeah.
So
cool.
Yeah. So that's the story. I just thought it was really great. Like,
well, it's a great story. I wasn't expecting this whole, oh yeah, by the way, we're climbing, and then we just got kidnapped for 6 days. I know. Didn't we just do that Sand book a couple weeks ago?
I know. Yeah.
Another adventure getting kidnapped.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
Do you think they would have gotten kidnapped if they would have went to the embassy? Probably would have happened anyways, but at least they would have known.
Yeah, I think that's the thing, is that the embassy didn't know that they were there, and so that's why their parents didn't even know they had been kidnapped
for a while.
Yeah. Until they were able to get
or
to
even
the embassy
at all until they were freed, or they escaped. Mm-hmm. That's crazy.
So so lesson learned: always check in the embassy.
Yeah, just so that they know where you are for sure. Mm-hmm. Crazy town, and even back then there was no cell phones either, right? Because it's just in 2000. So I mean, they had cell phones, but the bigger ones or whatever, and they weren't as ubiquitous as they are now.
Yeah, no, nothing.
All right, so The Push, on a scale of 1 to 10, as just a book, for the read, I'd give it a 10. That's a 10.
He's actually a really good writer. He's really, really good, really insightful. There's a ton of stuff we didn't go over. There's so many amazing climbs he goes through.
Yeah. I mean, that's not important to go over every single climb.
No, of course not. If you're a climber, you're gonna love it because he goes.
And if you're a climber, you probably already know this guy.
Oh, I would hope you know this guy. Yeah, you're gonna love it if you're a climber for sure. And it's interesting, the relationship dynamics as well. I thought that was he gets very vulnerable, which I always appreciate when people are able to be authentic and vulnerable in their books. And I just thought it was really, really great, really, really great author.
So the first person was Beth. This is her.
Yeah,
that's the
first wife.
The first wife.
Yeah.
Goodness. Oh yeah, there's this finger.
Yeah. Ooh. I know. Yeah, the finger to me is nuts that he's able to continue and do all that even without missing missing a finger. So
yeah. Well, remember that adventure guy, 127 hours?
Oh god.
Yeah, I had to cut his own arm off or whatever. Spoilers.
Watch that movie.
You haven't seen that movie. But that's crazy. Yeah, you just come back and you just adjust. You just adjust.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's fantastic. I mean, that's just a great lesson. Is to just persevere, and no matter what obstacles come in your way, if you have a goal and you have something that you want to do, you can find a way to get it done.
Well, and just if you love something as much as he loves climbing, and he's just this is where I'm supposed to be, is on big walls.
Yeah.
That he says that in the book. So
yeah. And how much of it too is this is where I'm supposed to be versus, well, this is kind of where I was and where I just kind of fell in love with because it's just been in your life too. So I think parents can really shape what their 100%. Kids have. I mean, if you're always rock climbing, it's not like he's like, well, I'm just going to grow up to be like a chess player. That doesn't quite make sense.
Well, of course. It's what you're exposed to.
Yeah. But still, but then that's still what you're exposed to, and it still ends up being what you love. So, which is amazing. Yeah. So about what to do in terms of adventure, would you want to do any of this kind of stuff?
Fuck all of that.
Yeah, and also
I'm reading it and my hands are getting sweaty. Even watching Free Solo, I feel my hands are so sweaty. Just watching this, and he's not gonna die, but you're still watching it and you're like, oh my
he's gonna die.
He's gonna die. Well, it was the same thing with The Alpinist. That one's also amazing documentary.
Yeah.
It's the same thing. You're watching him do on ice and you're just like, oh my God.
So if anything though, at least, climbing in a gym is okay and doing that, but not outdoors, not for you at all.
Fuck all of that.
Not even bouldering outdoors?
No. Maybe. But probably not. No, right, I prefer the indoor. That's the one thing I really miss about Waterloo is Grand River Rocks was such a great climbing gym.
Yeah,
it was so great.
Yep.
Yeah. But even then, like, I had a hard time getting to the top of those falls.
Yeah, well, I mean, you didn't go as much as I did.
No.
There was a point in time where I was going, like, I was there 2/3 of the time.
Yeah.
I won like prizes for like, because like the person who showed up the most, like every month would like win a prize. So like I got that a couple times, I think.
Yeah.
Because like, oh, you were here 20 times this month. I'm like, oh God, that's a lot. But yeah, I loved it. Yeah, it was a great place. But yeah, I mean, I'm the same. Like I have no desire to climb
outside.
Yeah, I think if I actually did though, I would like. I'd look at that. I'd be like, how amazing would that be with that view? Because it's fairly safe when you're on your ropes. You're just gonna be smart about it, right?
Fuck all of it.
Yeah. Well, I guess I'll go and then you'll be taking photos from the ground.
But do the heights not bother you?
Of course, it bothers me.
But when we go, like when we were going there last year to the climbing gym here, I feel like they didn't bother you at all. The bouldering?
It does bother me.
It does bother you?
It does bother me. Well, bouldering, no, because you're not very high on a boulder.
I don't know. It still freaks me out. That's still high to me.
Yeah, they can. Yeah. Well, you're a little bit shorter too, so
that's true.
It's a little bit longer of a fall too for you.
It is. That's true. Yeah.
Well, actually, I don't know if it's longer of a fall, but yeah, like if we're at the same height.
Yeah.
Well, no, it's still gonna be the same distance of a fall, but I don't know.
I don't know.
Just maybe proportionally higher because of your height.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, it still bothers me. Bouldering always, especially when you get to the top, because it's tough. But when I was in my prime of climbing, because I was doing like those oranges, so the V2s, V3s, and some of those were hard moves, and then you get to the top and you're so gassed. Then you have to remember you had to climb up to the top.
Topping out is the scariest thing
because falling from the real top is like that's high. So those are always big falls too. Yeah. So.
Well, yeah, I remember being like really specific about when we were bouldering at Grand River Rocks. I'm just like, I need to know like where my hands and how I'm going to get over. Like that to me was like the scariest part. Like going up, I loved that puzzle of figuring it out, but then I'm just like, I need to know how to get over the top.
But that one, there was always like really big holes up at the top.
But that one was okay. I liked that one, but the top out here is shit. I fucking hated it, and I never got to the top to go around.
The top out here, they only topped out at levels that would be too high for you. Your skill level, because at the smaller ones you couldn't even top out. That's interesting. So you basically had to do like the orange level to be able to get to top out.
Well, and then I remember the one at Grand River Rocks, the bouldering section at the back of the building,
the slab,
that one I didn't like the top out on that one either.
But that one was easy because it was this big thing. You just I
still didn't like it. It still freaked me out.
Which is the same as it is here too. It's just a flat wall. They don't even have any to grip, so that's why you gotta be good enough, because people when they get the top, but that's the strength too. It's like you just place your hands and you just pull. It's like it's like a muscle up. You have to have that good core strength. And I think that's the idea, is that when you're at a certain level, you have good strength to get up, so you should be able to top out no problem. Because it's the top. It's the top. Where you go. But if you're so jacked, just getting to the top and it's like that one last thing, it's
too much.
But you got to be careful falling too, because if you fall uncontrolled, like you can remember there was that one girl, she like twisted her whole MCL.
Because you're just not falling.
So you got to be careful.
Yep.
Anyways, all right, well, we won't go, that's fine. We're not traversing the Arctic either, so that's all right. But maybe at some point too, it'd be nice to get back into climbing somewhere.
I really
just need to figure out.
Just to find a good gym.
We just need to get sponsored. That's all. I mean, if we just get sponsored, then we could just climb all day. That would be great too. Because I'd love that whole idea of like, I'll just train all the time for 14 hours. I'm like, well, that's not a bad job. It's better than sitting at a desk all day. For me, anyways. So that's not too bad.
Oh, it's awesome.
Maybe someone will want to sponsor a couple 41-year-olds.
You're 42, my friend.
Am I 42?
You're 42 now.
Well, you'll be 42 soon enough. You'll catch up. You're catching up. All right. Well, I think that's it, eh? Anything else you want to cover? No, that's good. The Push, Tommy Caldwell, recommended, 10 out of 10. Good read, especially if you love climbing, which you've probably already read it. But if not, just a great story. So pick it up. Enjoy the read. And thank you for watching, as always, or listening. We appreciate it. High five?
Crisp high five.
Yeah. He's like, what are you, like, surprised every time that we're doing a high five? I've never done this before.
I'm so
We do it every time. And I think you're a pro now. I don't think I need to comment.
Ooh.
The contact is good.
Ooh,
It's just it's crisp. And it's 5.
It's awesome.
I think you've graduated.
Oh, I feel special.
So with that, thank you very much for listening.
Mm-hmm.
And
see you next week.
sounds good.